5 minutes, right? Yeah. Well, we have one. All right, so our first speaker then will be Gwen Hickman. And Gwen Hickman is an immigration and criminal law attorney.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Doing okay.
It's working.
I'm Gwen Hickman, running for U.S. Senate. You have my flyer on the table.
Sorry, I was just trying to get the
Oh, okay.
thing behind you.
No problem. I'm Gwen Hickman.
Yeah.
I intend to beat Tim Kaine.
You need to hold your mic like this.
Like this? Can you hear this? Okay, sorry about
Walk
that.
straight into the mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, let me start all over. Hello, how are you? I'm Gwen Hickman, running for U.S. Senate, and I will beat Tim Kaine. Tim Kaine is a lawyer. I'm a lawyer too, but I am red, white, and blue. That means America first. I will protect, defend, and fight for our rights, liberties, and freedoms. I will stand up for parents and protect our children. Because at the end of the day, traditional American values matter. Values that built this country into the best nation the world has seen. Values like God, family, country. Values that are enshrined in our Constitution, like freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, and a limited government. I would love if our government had our back and stood up for our values and our way of life. Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But when the government is attacking our way of life and our values, then I stand up with you, fellow patriots, and say enough. My mom was a school teacher. My dad, a nuclear physicist who worked to ensure the safety and success of military missions for the United States Navy. My brother was in the Army Reserves. I, quite frankly, come from a humble family who loves America. For the past 30 years, I've been the voice of and represented thousands of Virginians in state and federal courts in Virginia, D.C., and Maryland. I practice civil and criminal law, immigration, business law, and injury law. As your senator, I will work with all Virginians and be your voice, from the north to the south, to the east to the west, from the bustling cities to the countryside. I will work with Virginians, have an open door, solve problems unique to different quadrants, and let's get the job done.
Yeah.
Times are tough. Times are really tough right now. We have an open border. As you all know, this has been a point of contention in the U.S. Senate. I practice immigration law as well, and I know the right way that people come in. We're all migrants, but we came in the right way. People wait for years overseas to apply, have their application vetted, to have the sponsor's application vetted and their tax returns vetted. And they come in, and it's not overwhelming on the system, and that's the proper way for it to be done. This new bill that the Senate has crafted, I'm against. They are trying to tell us that 5,000 people per day are going to cross before we shut it down. And I say no. The right way is you have your application processed outside the U.S., and if and when it's granted, then we welcome you into the U.S. Because our resources are limited, and they must go to Americans first. The debt. We are at $34 trillion, and I heard something today that predicts the debt, if we don't curb it, will go up to 58 trillion in 10 years. I am a champion of controlled spending, energy independence, reduced taxes to spur job growth. Lastly, on the issue of our foreign policy, it's a complete disaster. As a result of the weak leadership, we are now involved in major wars that are draining our resources. We have to help our friends overseas. We are a leader of the free world, but we want to prevent wars. And with strong foreign policy, we can do that. One of the things that I am going to introduce into legislation is a bill that prevents the sale of American land to our enemies. In other words, America is not for sale. I ask you to join me in my campaign. Together we will change the direction of this country. I do not take money from special interest groups or politicians. Thank you very much. God bless America.
So our next candidate is Scott Parkinson.
All right.
And he's Plug for Growth Vice President of Government Affairs and former Chief of Staff for Ron DeSantis.
Okay, I'm going to skip the microphone. I think I can talk loud enough for everybody to hear me. Who's ready to defeat Tim Kaine in 2024? Let's hear it. Well, listen, we've got a real opportunity right now in Virginia to take back our country. We can win a wave election. We know that Donald Trump is crushing Joe Biden right now among independents. An NBC poll was released on Monday. Trump was up 19%. I can't believe it. I do believe it, actually. You know why? Because Biden's policies are crushing median household income families. We know that the added cost of Joe Biden's policies is $12,230 every year just in Virginia. Think about that 4-year cost. You guys remember when Ronald Reagan used to ask, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? I think that everybody in Virginia is going to realize in November that they are worse off today than they were underneath Donald Trump, and we are going to win a landslide election. We can do this. You got to have the faith. We know that Joe Biden is quite vulnerable. Today, a special counsel said Joe Biden, during the interview, could not remember when he was vice president. He couldn't remember when his son Beau died. That's the commander-in-chief today. We need competency back at the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. And we need to make sure that we have peace through strength. Invest in our naval fleet. Make sure that our shipbuilders, make sure that we've got workforce development right down here in Hampton Roads. I'll tell you, you got to show up to win. I've been running for 10 months, and I've come down here. This is my 16th trip to this community. I'm invested in winning Hampton Roads. I'm invested in winning all over Virginia. It's so important to show up and make your case to the people, to the voters. So what's my background? I've worked for 3 United States senators, Marco Rubio from Florida, Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, and John Ensign from Nevada. Then I went over to the House of Representatives, and I was a senior staffer. I served as executive director at the Republican Study Committee. Later, I was Ron DeSantis' chief of staff in 2018 when he won a close race by only 30,000 votes in 2018 against Andrew Gillum in Florida. It was the most important race that cycle because we didn't have a presidential race. I know how to win close races. We've got to unify the Republican Party. We've got to end the tension among all the different tribes in Virginia. That's the path to victory. All of you can be a part of this team. I invite you to join me, scottparkinson.com. Follow me on social media. Make sure you've signed my petitions. Public safety. Everybody here walking to your cars, you're going to feel pretty safe here. I know that there's some people that probably have concealed carry. But I will tell you, there's a lot of women that are terrified to walk to their cars when the sun goes down. They're terrified of fentanyl killing their grandchildren. I was in Prince William County earlier in January, and there was a leader of the faith community telling us such a sad story about a 1-year-old baby that got exposure to fentanyl and died. weeks before Christmas. This is not just about the junkies, it's about all of our future. I've got 4 kids. Sorry, I'm off the camera. I've got 4 kids. 13, she's 5'7". She's even taller than my wife already. Kids grow up fast. I've got a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and my son just turned 2 on January 28th. This is about fighting for their future. This is about preserving America and fighting for our freedoms. I've worked with the Tea Party since 2008. Tea Party Patriots, Jenny Beth Martin, Tea Party Express. We are taxed enough already. I've worked on tax policy at the highest levels with President Trump. On the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. You guys remember those Trump tax cuts? They got the economy humming. And we can get that happening again. Did you know the tax cuts expire at the end of 2025? That's going to be one of the first big things. We've got to tackle the debt limit in January 2025. But we also need to make sure that we are confirming President Trump's nominees to executive branch agencies and important judicial confirmations. I'm not going to get lost in the hallways downstairs in all those tunnels that connect the Senate with the U.S. Capitol. I'm not going to have an accident on my way to the bathroom. I have the experience, 18 years. I'm ready to go on day 1. There's no learning curve necessary. Please join me. ScottParkinson.com. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Okay, our next candidate is Chuck Smith. He's a former JAG, and he was also chair of the Republican Party at one time. Chuck?
Diana, could you ask again to stay sort of behind the...
Yeah, if you can like stay within this area because of the camera.
All right, all right.
All right?
Okay, good. Oh, good, that's fine. No, that's
Nobody
good.
wants this mic.
Good evening, my name is Chuck Smith. I'm a candidate for the United States Senate. You know, in order to beat Tim Kaine, you're going to need a message, a good message and a lot of money. Here's my message. I believe in America. I believe in the founding fathers. I believe in God Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord. I believe in we the people of the United States of America in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility. I believe in God bless America, lift every voice and sing, my country, 'tis of thee, the battle hymn of the Republic. It is precisely because I believe that you can count on me to stand for America, stand for Virginia, and by the grace of God, come hell or high water, no matter what, stand and endorse President Donald J. Trump as the next President of the United States of America and never let him down. So help me God. I am not a weak rhino establishment, sometime sunshine Republican. I'm America first. I am pro-America, pro-Virginia, pro-life, pro-children, pro-child safety. I believe in this country. I am pro-Trump, MAGA, automatically anti-Democrat, and a card-carrying, gun-toting, 100% unapologetic supporter of the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, our military, and our men and women in blue. We face unprecedented challenges. COVID, crime, treating parents like domestic terrorists, drug policy, economic policy, election integrity, immigration policy on the border, January 6th, inflation. But to fix these problems, we need a plan, unlike the weak rhino establishment Republicans who have consistently failed to win a United States Senate seat in over 20 years. The only way to win back Virginia is for a true populist conservative to mobilize the Old Dominion's blue-collar voters on issues they are concerned about. American jobs, a strong border, a secure border, and no more pointless foreign wars. We don't need more laws. We need to enforce the laws we've got. If you arrest an American president for political reasons in an overt attempt to take down, tear down, do away with the United States Constitution's guarantee of fundamental rights of the people, you will be held accountable and subject to prison. If you bring home the basketball player but leave behind the Marine to rot in a Russian jail, you will be held accountable and subject to prison. If you give Americans their marijuana rights but intentionally deny them their First Amendment rights, you will be held accountable and subject to prison. If you leave Americans on the ground to die like dogs, and in the evacuation of Benghazi and also Afghanistan, you will be held accountable and subject to prison. If you destroy 33,000 emails after receiving a subpoena, no, we haven't forgotten, you will be held accountable and subject to prison. If you lie to Congress or lie about Congress or on Congress like Adam Schiff, you will be held accountable. If you allow one balloon or flag of the Chinese government or aircraft to fly over any American property, you will be held accountable. If you touch one child for the purpose of sex indoctrination, sex reconfiguration, you will be held accountable. We've got to get our country back. We've got to get our values back. We've got to get our vision back. Because if we don't, we're going to be out of touch, out of reach, out of bounds, lost, like some ship floating aimlessly through the night. But I'm sorry, because just like Abraham Lincoln, the founder of this party, we cannot set freedom free unless we take a page out of history, where Americans, women and men, boys and girls, lift their heads up, lift their backs up, lift their vision up, lift their faith up, lift their anchor up, and turn this ship around. If you're looking for courage, where's a Marine, 0311 ground pounder? You're looking for integrity, where's a Navy JAG commander, retired after 26 years of combined military service? If you're looking for conservative loyalty, where's the former chairman of the largest Republican Party in the Commonwealth of Virginia? If you're looking for experience, where's somebody who can tell everybody that he has practiced law longer than anybody who's ever run for statewide office in Virginia's 400-year history? Let me break that down. Longer than Tim Kaine, who was in the 5th grade when I enlisted in the Marine Corps. Longer than Mark Warner, who was in the 10th grade when I enlisted in the Marine Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to get our country back. We've got to stand up for values. And if we do that, we'll be able to stand with the founders and sing the old song, God Bless America, land that I love. Thank you all. God bless you.
And our next candidate is Ron Vitiello, former Deputy Director of U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement. Oh.
I'm gonna go loud.
Okay, another loud mouth.
Thank you. That might not be the first time I heard that. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank you for your activism. The Tea Party makes things happen. And so you being in this room is a demonstration of what you can make happen if we do some things together. Raise your hand if you believe that Tim Kaine is ready to retire. Yeah, we can do that. It's people in rooms like this and people like you that are going to make that happen. I love this. I love my Lord. I love this country. I love my family. I've been married to the same woman for 35 years. We raised 2 healthy children that are out in the world making things happen for themselves. And I want to give my service back to this country like I did in 1985 when I took the oath. The Commander-in-Chief was Ronald Reagan. I took that oath, and 32 years later, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, needed someone to run the Border Patrol as the chief who was trusted by the front line and was effective in that role. He chose me. A while later, when he needed a new leader at ICE, he chose me. I'm asking for your trust and for you to choose me to serve you in the halls of the United States Senate. Now, given my employment history and what I did for the government on your behalf and why I took that oath, there's nobody in this race that knows more about how the border works and how to fix it. I not only did it on the front line, but I supervised and led the men and women of the entire United States Border Patrol, and I was in that uniform of this country for 33 years. I'm proud of every second I spent in it, and I did it for you. I was all about service when I was in the government. So much so, when I was tempted going through the nomination and I had Republicans and Democrats asking me for favors that were outside of policy and sometimes subject to illegal activity, I said no. I stood up for you because I took that oath and it still means the same thing. I kept that oath at the time, and I did it every single day of my career. I still live up to it. So on the border stuff, I have expertise. I have expertise not because I'm a genius, right? I'm not the smartest guy in this room. I usually am not. But I lived that problem my entire adult life. And we all know what we're seeing on the border is unacceptable. Tim Kaine and Joe Biden cannot pretend that they love this country. They can't talk about what patriots they are, that they love America, while they sit on their hands and watch what's happening every single day at our United States border. And I have lots of thoughts and effectiveness and some record of accomplishment as it relates to federal budgets. It was talked about earlier, we have a $34 trillion, with a T, $1 trillion federal debt in this country, and rising. When Tim Kaine took office, that same debt was $16 trillion. Please raise your hand if you think the federal government is twice as good as it was when Tim Kaine swore in. There's no hands in the room. I wonder why. When I was leading the Border Patrol, the fine men and women of that organization, our budget, our federal budget, your tax money coming to us, $3.5 billion, deployed on behalf of border security in this nation. That's an enormous amount of money. Each of us would leave here happy with a fraction of it. It's easy to spend money in the federal government. Those of you that know or have been federal employees, the incentive is to spend. The incentive in Congress is to spend. You know, they always talk about bipartisanship. Well, you know what they agree on most often? Spending your money. So that $3.5 billion, again, very easy to spend. But when you get under the hood and you look and you chase the pennies, you find out that you're wasting here and you're wasting there. We got attacked by the Obama administration when I was the deputy chief at Border Patrol. They attacked the pay system of the hardworking men and women on the front line. I worked with the House, I worked with the Senate, and got a landmark pay reform package passed, bipartisan support. Not to spend more, stabilize the pay of those men and women, put more boots on the ground, 1,200 net new, and save you $1 billion over 10 years. I want to do that for you, not just for the Homeland Security enterprise, but the Department of Education. Everybody believe that $88 billion is being spent wisely by our Department of Education? No, it's not. We need to empower parents. We need to get under the hood of these budgets and cut the fat, because it's out there and we all know it's out there. Please go to my website, chiefvitielloforsenate.org. That's chiefvitielloforsenate.org. Thanks for signing the petitions. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being active. God bless you all.
Get all four candidates to come up here and we can start asking questions. If you could all turn in your cards to me.
Hey, Diana.
You sent it to my Gmail? Okay.
Chairman@vbtv.org.
Sorry, that goes to my computer. I'll have to open
All right,
up my computer.
what's your other email?
Okay, well, I already have one question here, so while they answer, we'll give them 2 minutes to answer questions, okay? Okay, one person said, this all sounds great. What do we do until election? How do we stop a rigged election? Everybody, some people think that 2020 was rigged, so what do you think?
Well, the election integrity, I agree, is a huge problem. To stop it, I think, number one, Republicans have to be boots on the ground and get people engaged and vote. Democrats are very good with this early voting, and we must do the same by going door to door. To stop it, we need poll watchers, quite frankly, to maintain the integrity so you can see what people are doing when they come into the polls. As far as mail-in ballots, that's a huge problem. The only way to change that is to change the law in Virginia. And that's not going to happen because we're Democrat-controlled in the House and in the Senate in Virginia. But it's a huge problem. You need to write your Congress people in the state level and make your voice heard, that you are demanding one-day voting with voter ID. Thank you.
Well, I agree. In a fair fight, we're going to win. So we have to work to make it fair. We have to make sure that we understand what the rules are and use those rules to the advantage for people who deserve to be in those offices, people who want to serve you. So it starts with our own will to do the right thing and call it out when it's not. When Mark Zuckerberg can put 17 million new voters into the pipeline during a presidential election, does anybody believe that that was all fair and not rigged? No, it's not, because those first-time voters that he got off of Facebook, those are not the people who are voting for Republicans. So we need to take advantage of the rules as they are, and if that's mail-in voting, and if that's getting people to the polls early, then let's do it. I don't believe that's the way we should do it in the future. And so using the power of the Senate, using the bully pulpit of the junior senator of Virginia, you get active, you tell people, and then when we go to the polls, and when your friends and you work at the polls, you call out the nonsense. And you make it acceptable for all of us not to whisper about the election being rigged, not to whisper about what Facebook did. Let's call it out for what it is and make sure it doesn't happen to us again.
So listen, I think the question was, would I have voted for the certification of the 2020 election? Of course I would have voted to object. I think that there was a lot of problems with the way that the election was conducted. We know that governors unconstitutionally changed their election laws, ran up the score in places like Nevada, where they mailed out absentee ballots to every registered voter in the entire state. The voter rolls are the problem. We need to clean up those voter rolls. I keep standing away from the camera. I'm getting urged to stand back, but I'm excited to be in front of each of you. Listen, I also think we have a big problem with the illegal immigration population. There are woke districts in states that are allowing their illegal immigrants to vote in elections. That's why voter ID is important. We should have that at the federal level. I think we should also have a constitutional amendment that says you can only allow U.S. citizens to vote in American elections, and that would stop states like California from having the ability to allow their illegals to vote. We also have a problem with the U.S. Census Bureau. They are including illegal aliens in their population totals as they do proportional representation for the House of Representatives. That's a real problem. I know that's not exactly related to election integrity, but it is related to the, it is related to the fact of how many congressional seats each state gets. So those are a couple of the big issues I think we need to address. As U.S. Senator, I will make sure that we are, number one, voting to certify Donald Trump as the next President of the United States.
Listen, the greatest threat that we have to the United States is the destruction of the Constitution.
You have to hold it like this.
The greatest threat we have is the destruction of the Constitution. I know we have border issues. Those are powerful. But remember, the government can still exist if there is no border. But the government cannot exist if there is no right to vote. Why? Because there are restraints on government. The founders knew that there are rights that are retained by the people. And that fundamental to those rights is the right of the people to speak out. The right to vote is paramount. Yes, I believe that the election was rigged. I don't care what anyone says. I believe that you cannot sit in a basement and come out with 80 million votes. It's just not going to happen. We have to get our country back, and in doing that, we have to make sure that our Constitution is intact. How is it that 4 Republican justices on the Colorado Supreme Court, who went to law school, could believe that there is no innocent until proven guilty? How is it they could just completely ignore the Fifth Amendment? Not just the Fifth Amendment, we have destructions of the First Amendment. We have a J6 people who are really not receiving justice. They've been in jail for a long time. They've been charged. There is a right to freedom of the speech. The founders knew that people could and should speak out against their government. And if the government is not listening, I think it's time that the people stand up. And we need to get rid of mail-in balloting, because I believe that's insecure. We need to get rid of these ballotings where we have people who we can't even verify that they've cast a vote. There should be no absentee balloting unless you're in the military or unless you are truly dislocated at election time.
Okay, if you want to hand that mic to Ron, he can go first on this question. We have J6 people that are incarcerated for a ridiculous amount of time. That is tyranny and must be stopped. What will you do to voice against political tyranny?
Agree. What happened on January 6th is not a federal holiday. It isn't for Republicans. It might be for a lot of Democrats, but it's not for Republicans. And you need a government, and you need a senator in the Commonwealth of Virginia that cares about serving you. And one of the ways that you do that is in vigorous oversight, and you pull back all the layers of the onion. You hold everyone to account for what they did, the preparations at the Capitol, what instructions were given to the law enforcement, how was the call to get the National Guard ignored or otherwise not fulfilled. You have to get on both sides of the equation what happened before those people came to the Capitol and what happened after. And what happened to Ashley Babbitt and all those things. You need a senator working on your behalf that will pull back the layers of that onion and get accountability on all sides of the equation. If there were thousands of people who were in the Capitol, there are thousands of stories, and each one of them needs to be heard, documented, and put forward in a transparent way so that we all understand what happened, so that it will never happen again. There's plenty of blame to go around on why not the National Guard was called out. If you look at Chief Sun's testimony under oath about how many times he asked, and leadership on both sides of the aisle failed in that request. And so that needs to come forward, that needs to come out of the transparency. That's about hearings, that's about getting people under oath and making sure this never happens to us again.
Okay, fantastic.
We still don't know how many FBI agents were inciting that mob mentality. It reminds me of a school fight when you see one person give a sucker punch to somebody and then 12 kids run up and kick them in the head. It is a terrible thing. And we know that the FBI infiltrated those crowds. We know that they wanted to create the chaos. I encourage President Trump to do a full pardon of all the J6 prisoners. The right to a speedy trial, the constitutional right to a speedy trial has been completely ignored by our justice system. I believe in equal justice under the law for all, and that includes the J6 political prisoners. We need a full pardon.
Listen, I think we need to cut the crap. I think we need to believe, just as the Supreme Court believes, that the case Brady v. Maryland means that J6 people, any person who goes to trial on a criminal case, must have all the available evidence before their trial, before they are convicted. Yes, I would introduce legislation that would pardon every single J6 person. We have a constitution that is completely being overlooked. We have our J6 people, many of whom still have trials pending. Some of them waited for 2 or 3 years. In any criminal case where you have the constitutional rights violated, the defendant walks. I don't believe that we should have people who are locked up for exercising their First Amendment rights to freedom of the speech.
Okay, if you would give that.
Look, we're a country of law and order, are we not?
Supposed to be.
I believe J6 was a protest that got out of control. But the facts and circumstances around this protest must be taken into consideration by the courts. You cannot allow destruction of property. You just can't. You can't have it both ways. However, the sentencing of these people is out of control. It's way, way, way too high for the events that happened that day. I would definitely be a proponent of suspending all their sentences. They've done enough. Enough. We are not a country that wants to hold someone for a protest for years and years in prison. So that would be my answer, is to have someone in the Senate to hold hearings and suspend the time. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Scott, you'll be first. Okay, so do you support school choice, delivering the amount of child's K-12 funding from the federal government to the parents so that they can use it for either private school, homeschooling, religious school, whatever?
This is just a softball. Yes, of course. I'm the school choice candidate. For my 4 kids, I pulled them out of public school during COVID. They weren't getting the right educational opportunities in K through 12. We know that they were doing the mask mandates. My daughter was being bullied over not getting the vaccine. It was not her choice. It was her parents' choice. We've got to be advocates for our own kids. I strongly support the backpack bill, where the federal dollars should follow the parents and the students, not the educational institution. Arizona bill that just was signed into law is the gold standard for school choice legislation. And in my capacity at Club for Growth, I've been working incredibly close with a member of the House of Representatives to do that bill at the federal level. We need to eliminate all the Title I funding, eliminate the Department of Education, and instead send that money through the Department of Treasury directly to parents and students.
So yes, I believe we need to get rid of the Department of Education. Listen, our Constitution, our federal government is supposed to do what states and the people cannot do. They're not supposed to absorb all power and do everything and be everything to everyone. If we're going to have our children operate and function at their level best, then we need a responsible government. Number one, we should move education to the state's level. They're better able to handle it at that level. Number two, we should get rid of the bureaucrats who spend more money on their salaries than they do on schools and school programs. And yes, I believe money should follow the student, period.
Okay, give that to Gwen.
I too believe in school choice. It makes common sense that the money would follow the child. What parent doesn't want their child to have the best education that money can buy? It also is going to put a big incentive on public schools to do better, because they're going to see the people leaving their schools and they want them to stay. They need the jobs. So yes, 100% let the money follow the student.
We all know that the $88 billion that Joe Biden wants to give the Federal Department of Education is not being deployed downrange on your behalf. It's not going to our kids. It's not improving schools. It's not improving transparency. That's grant money that goes to all their friends, and mostly it goes to the teachers' union. So we do need universal school choice. We need to empower parents. If we're going to spend any money of your taxes in Washington on education, it needs to go to parents. And if parents choose to use the public school, I'm a public school kid. If parents choose to use the public school down the street from their home, then that district and any federal dollar that they may take, any penny that they may take from the federal government, will be designed to empower parents, to give those parents choice and 100% accountability and transparency for what goes on in the curriculum. We owe that to our children. We always talk about it. You hear the Democrats, the children are our future. Well, let's give them the best chance that they can. In this society, in our culture, education is important. And so we need to empower parents so their kids can have the best opportunity available, and that not $88 billion to the Department of Education. We need to empower parents. We need to disinfect our classrooms from the woke ideology and the indoctrination and the sexualization that's going on each and every day. Our kids deserve that.
Okay, pass that over to Chuck. Chuck, you're first this time. Okay, Democrats and Republicans are so divided right now. You don't see that changing in the short term. Democrats stick together most of the time. How will you keep Republicans united for Senate votes? Be Pacific.
I think Republicans need to do what they say. If you're going to run for office on a certain platform, then when you get elected in office, you should do what you're saying. I think the voters are disillusioned. Voters want a good government, but they also want responsibility. And I think it's the obligation of not just candidates, but the voters to make sure that we hold our candidates responsible. We need to get rid of this idea that you can stay in office forever and ever and ever. We see how that has just completely destroyed Mitch McConnell and is destroying Lindsey Graham. We need to have term limits. We need to have people who are elected officers to form to do a specific function to carry the representation where the people cannot go to the halls of Congress, instead of making people feel as if they are not represented. I think it's extremely important that we get people who want to serve in government. We get people who want to not be activists in their own policies and own views, but they represent the communities and the states in which they come from.
Okay, you pass that over to Gwen.
Look, it's difficult, there's so much polarization in this country right now. It's very difficult to get groups of people to agree on anything. But as far as Republicans go, we can band together those that excuse me, have a common purpose and really want American first values. Those Republicans who share these values can easily band together and use their influence towards other Republicans who may not be so first American oriented and put influence and pressure on them to join. Because that's what Americans want, that's what Republicans want. They want strong leadership and they want us to be united and not divided when it comes to votes. You've got to get people on board, and with my experience in negotiating, I can do that for you. Thank you.
Here's what we're not going to do. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that with a slim majority in the Senate, I'm going to solve every problem that we have in the United States. I'm not going to unify or join forces with Susan Collins. I'm not going to do that. Unless she's going to come our way on America First principles. Right? There are things that we can do with a thin majority in the Senate. Here's a couple of ideas. These are not universal, but is it right for the president, who is actually our employee, to spend 40% of his time outside of the White House? I think you could unify Republicans and Democrats to make sure that the president doesn't get more vacation time than every other person in America. There needs to be a limit on that. Those are the kind of things you can unify on with a thin majority. Now, would it be better if we flipped the Senate and had 60 seats and could move all sorts of legislation? That's when you can start to really solve problems legislatively. But think about what we can do with a thin majority. You can unite around America First principles. You can rein in executive power. Talk about the vacation time. Talk about executive orders. You can unify around the idea that the president, with a stroke of a pen or with his phone, can change immigration policy in the United States. You can unify with Republicans and maybe some smart Democrats about things like that. And what I'm not going to do is unify with people like Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Mitch McConnell. Those people are in the Uniparty. They're not in your Republican.